Welcome back to another installment of Underground Nutrition's Esoteric Supplements. Today we're talking about Yohimbe, the West African aphrodisiac turned gas station boner pill. First, let's get over the confusion of Yohimbe versus Yohimbine HCl. Yohimbe is sold as an extract or concentrate, and it comes from the Yohimbe tree found in West Africa. Yohimbine is the drug isolated from the bark and then combined with hydrochloric acid. They both do the same thing, although I prefer the HCl version personally. I've tried them both, and I feel like the HCl version hits me a lot harder. So the three reasons why people would use Yohimbe: fat loss, performance enhancement, better boners. Let's go over fat loss. Yohimbe binds to the alpha-2 receptors. Now, it's sort of known or has been said in the supplement world that Yohimbe targets stubborn fat areas. And on paper, that's because these alpha-2 receptors are in a much higher concentration in the lower abdomen on men, inner thighs on women, and the Yohimbe does a good job of binding to these receptors and mobilizing fat there. Performance enhancing. Yohimbe does an interesting thing in that it triggers a fight or flight response, which dumps norepinephrine and epinephrine, and it gives you a much better workout. So it's a palpable feeling. It's something like a tangible feeling. My experiences with it is that it does just that. It's not as strong as a true stimulant fat burner or even like a clenbuterol, but used in tandem with dieting, especially fasted. Yohimbe should only be used fasted because the second you introduce carbs or food into your system, there's some evidence that the insulin absolutely destroys its effects. So fasted cardio, 5 milligrams to 10 milligrams of Yohimbine HCl over a 2-week period produces significant results. So from a aphrodisiac standpoint, from a purely anecdotal standpoint, I've used Yohimbine when I was bodybuilding and dieting pretty hard, and I used it in almost every form. Yohimbe, the bark extract, which I never really got a lot out of, and then the Yohimbine HCl, which I got a good amount out. And I've also used an injectable form, and that, in terms of an aphrodisiac, there's nothing like it. And that has to do with the bioavailability. Yohimbine and Yohimbine aren't very bially available, so you do need to sort of play with the dosages. For me, it's anywhere from 3 to 15 milligrams is around what I'll take depending on my tolerance. I'll usually work my way up. But as I get past the 5 milligram threshold, the aphrodisiac effects are noticeable, like very noticeable. like not like, worth talking about on YouTube noticeable. One thing that I really enjoy when I do these esoteric videos is the idea of West African tribes like 5,000 or 6,000 years ago collecting the bark of the Yohimbe and doing some sort of like ceremonial, ritual, war, sex fucking thing that I've completely made up in my head. And then like fast forward today to like retards injecting the shit so that they can get shredded to go to DJs. Like if your ancestors could see you now. 6% body fat, still no pussy. I don't know. This shit sucks. I feel like this fucking video sucks. Oh my God. A lot of people should not take Yohimbe. If you have anxiety, if you have any anxiety disorders, if you have mental health issues, if you're very stressed out, if you have heart issues or neurological issues, and I believe an MAO inhibitor, I'm not exactly sure what that is, but I know for some reason that you should 100% not take Yohimbe. It really depends on the person. Like some people really like stimulants. Some people really like high caffeine and DMHA and DMAA and cocaine, and then they take Yohimbine and they can't fucking handle it for some reason. For people who are trying it out for the first time, start very small, very low dose, like 3 milligrams or even under. Gauge your tolerance. If you're like a stress box, stay away from it. It's just gonna fuck you up. I mean, the first time I used injectable Yohimbine, it's a very strange feeling because you get that fight or flight response, but then you also get the aphrodisiac response. And in nature, I feel like those things don't go together very well. When are you in a fight or flight situation, but also want to watch porn? Another thing to talk about is the studies. Now, I always like to try to bring some science in with the folklore. There are studies. These studies are fugazi. I've read them. One's like with 20 women. The science is there for this stuff. On paper, Yohimbe does exactly what it's supposed to do in terms of the alpha-2 receptors. There was a soccer player study and there was a fat lady study where they took 20 fat ladies and they gave them Yohimbine and the placebo, and the people who took the Yohimbine had a significant reduction in weight. And the soccer players, interestingly enough, also lost body fat, but retained muscle. So that's one of the mythological benefits, is that Yohimbine, while losing body fat, will also preserve muscle. Beyond that, the most interesting study that I read, and this is very important, and this ties into people who should not take Yohimbine. It triggers a drug-seeking effect in lab rats that were addicted to cocaine. In the study, it said very specifically that the rats were most susceptible to the drug-seeking behavior early in recovery. So like 2 days off of cocaine, they were introduced to Yohimbine and they went into drug-seeking patterns, whereas the rats who had longer were less likely. It's very nice of us as people to get poor rats addicted to fucking cocaine and then make them kick and then give them drugs to see what triggers them to want it again. But it's probably to do with the epinephrine and norepinephrine, that if somebody in very early recovery takes Yohimbine, there is a very real chance that it's going to trigger drug-seeking behavior. And as somebody who's in recovery myself for 10 years, I feel like that's an important disclaimer. Although I will say that if you're 2 days clean and you're going to a store to buy performance enhancers like Yohimbine, I think your priorities are fucked up. You should call your sponsor. I have no idea what this video is going to turn out like, but if you liked it, hit subscribe. If you like my mustache, subscribe.